All right. How's everybody doing? We're going to get ready to get started. And we got to, as you can see on the graphic, we have a very, very special guest. She'll be joining us later. She'll be joining us very soon on the show. And that is the lovely Ms Caroline Fenton from Stillman and Company of Nashville's 102.5 The Game. She's stuck in a little bit of Nashville traffic at the moment, so I definitely know how that is. And she will definitely be joining us at some point during the show. So we're going to be getting ready to get started. Again, we got quite a bit to get into. We'll definitely have to talk about, we'll recap this Patriots game just a bit, and then kind of the thoughts that have happened within the first 12 games of the season, and going into, what was some of the, what was the best thing that maybe happened, what was the worst thing that happened, and what what the future holds as far as the last 5 games of the season as we make our push not only towards a division title, but also possibly still getting that number 1 seed. So we're going to get ready to get started in 30 seconds. Good evening, Titan Nation. How is everybody? Good evening, Titan Nation. How's everybody doing? Welcome in to TNT Tonight. I am your host, Chris, aka Blue Enforcer, and we are going to have a very fun episode on this evening, and I hope more of you go ahead and start to pile in to the show, as it is indeed ladies' night here on Titans and Truth. So if you know any of the Titan female faithful that are out there, make sure they join the show so that they too could be included in this great conversation that we're going to have, because we're going to definitely have some fun. We're definitely going to have some fun. Not just talking, we're talking Titans, but we're going to be talking a lot about what has transpired during the season with the injuries, and also the outlook for the last 5 games of the season coming up. I have a very special guest on the way. The lovely Ms Caroline Fenton from 102.5 The Game in Nashville. She will be joining us at some point this evening. She's stuck in a little bit of traffic right now, but she is definitely going to be joining the show at some point tonight. So definitely stay tuned for that. But what I need everybody to do, and as Lee pointed out, smash that like button. Smash that like button. And I see we got Kent Woods in the house. We got, what's up with you? Ian, what's going on with y'all? Kent, I owe you an apology. I didn't get a chance to get called back with you. I apologize for that. But make sure you share the show out. And I'm also right now for a little bit live on Instagram as well. So definitely check that out. Make sure y'all smash that like button. Definitely hit the like button. Also share the show out. Almost at 1,100 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as you can see on any of the pages listed below in the ticker and everything. So I definitely do appreciate everybody joining this show. So while we wait on Caroline to join us, well, let's go ahead and get into, first of all, I didn't really get a chance to recap the unfortunate 36-13 loss to the New England Patriots. And, you know, it was a game that, although it was disappointing, there were a lot of good things that did come out of that game. And that's what we're going to get into. Number one, yes, Ryan Tannehill only went 11 of 21 for 93 yards. Had a touchdown, had an interception. And the interception wasn't completely his fault. I mean, it was just a great play by the Patriot defense. And I just thought the play calling in that situation was not really great. I mean, you got 4 downs inside of the 5. You should be able to punch it in from there. I'm just thinking, go with what's been working for you, and it looked like we went away from that. Now, you had a good game from the running backs. Deontay Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard both had good games. Deontay Foreman had 19 carries, 109 yards. Dontrell Hilliard had 12 carries, 131 yards, and the lone 68-yard touchdown. The bad thing is for them, they both fumbled the football at the very worst of times. I mean, very bad times. And so that was something that was bad. The Hilliard fumble in the beginning, I believe it was 13-6. I mean, it was 13-6 at the time, and the Titans were getting past midfield of the Patriots and possibly had a chance to either make it, 13-9 or tie it up at 13 at that point, and then the fumble happened and the Patriots get a field goal out of it to make it 16-6. Now, Dontrell Hilliard did redeem himself, definitely redeemed himself by getting the score before the end of the first half, which was also very impressive too. But you also have the Foreman fumble. That was just, and I honestly could say that one to me was worse than the Hilliard fumble. That Deontay Foreman fumble was the worst one because it was a legit momentum. It wasn't just a drive killer. It was a momentum killer. It destroyed everything. And I do have our special guest on the line, and I'm going to go ahead and get ready to bring her in. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to some and introduce to others from 102.5 The Game. Let us welcome the lovely Ms. Caroline Fenton to the show. Caroline, thank you for accepting my invitation. I know this is something that's been a long time coming, even though I could tell Jared was a bit like, why are we talking about this yesterday? But I am so happy.
Don't pay him any mind. Don't pay him any mind. I appreciate that introduction, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on. Seriously, I'm very, very happy to be here.
Yes, it is. I just figured, it's ladies' night tonight, so I'm like, we got to have a very special lady on the cast. So
Thank
I just
you.
thought, I mean, it just wouldn't have felt right if I don't have one of the Nationals' brightest stars in Caroline. I'm like,
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm deserving of that, but I truly, truly do appreciate it, and I appreciate having a ladies' night. I mean, hey, I think you're the only broadcaster in Nashville that has a night specifically designated for the ladies, so I appreciate that.
yeah, and that's what we try to do. You know, we're definitely trying to spread the love. We're trying to spread the love to the ladies, and to kind of bring something that that the ladies can be a part of this, because I know it's not just guys that are fans of the show. There are also a lot of female Titan fans and a lot of female football fans in general. So I just think you gotta have some love on both sides. This whole toxic masculinity thing that's always out there, gotta we got to kind of kill that noise. And
It's 2021 and there is no room for that. There are plenty of female Titans fans out there, plenty of female football fans out there, and probably plenty of females who are kind of worried and nervous about getting into football fandom because there aren't too many female faces, but having football female faces and having female voices talking about football just makes it so much more of a welcoming environment. So I appreciate that you creating that space for us.
absolutely, it is a pleasure and an honor to do that. And plus, I drive my wife crazy with that. I give my wife that much credit because she lets me be me when it comes to sports. She doesn't even argue or anything with that. She's like, "Yep, I know where I stand in all of this."
And as long as you know your place and, like, the Titans are your thing and she lets you have your thing, hey, everyone needs their
Exactly.
thing.
I'll let her have everything else. Just let me have this. So
Exactly.
once
Let me have
again,
my two-tone blue.
absolutely. But Caroline, thank you again for coming on this evening. And obviously, Ian is showing love to you.
Hey,
Say,
Ian.
hey, Caroline.
Hey, Ian.
And DO9, what's up with you? And, I was just talking about just kind of going over a little bit of what happened with the Patriots game. And, before we do get to that, what were your thoughts hearing about, as one of my frat brothers, CJ, how's it going? Blue Five, my brother. Adrian Peterson going to the Seahawks now. That's a very interesting thing, especially with what's going on. The Seahawks are now 3-8, losing to Washington. Looks like their playoff chances are pretty much gone. What were your original thoughts when you heard that?
I mean, my original thoughts whenever the Titans decided to release Adrian Peterson were, okay, their sights are turning toward these younger running backs, these other running backs, which actually
Mm-hmm.
turned out to be a really good decision for them to put a majority of the load on Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman and Jeremy Nichols as well whenever he comes back. Kari Blasingame, whenever he can kind of step into a bigger role, but really on those two backs in Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman. So at first, it wasn't a huge shock to me whenever the Titans decided to release Adrian Peterson, especially not after the Patriots game when we saw them get so many of the snaps and we saw them run up for 270 yards against the Patriots. But
Yes.
him signing with the Seahawks, I think this year, more so than any other years, there's so many teams that are having running back issues. The Ravens are one of them, and the
Mm-hmm.
Seahawks are also one of them. So I think they saw what he did for the Titans, which wasn't a lot, but he showed that, hey, I'm an old dude. My best days are probably behind me, but I can still I can come in there. I can be a reliable back. I can maybe come in and be a third down back, pick up a first down every once in a while. So I think the Seahawks at this point are just trying to find anything that they can get, any kind of asset to try and help their team. Because as we saw Monday Night Football against the Washington football team, they can really use all the help they can get. But from a Titans perspective, I wouldn't look too far into it. He was a guy that was able to come in. He didn't help out tremendously, but I don't think that was necessarily Mike Vrabel and Todd Downing's MO was for Adrian Peterson to come in and, be that seamless transition between Derrick Henry and whoever they chose to put in that role. I don't think that was necessarily their plan for Adrian Peterson. So not incredibly surprised by the news, but I think the Seahawks can use all the help they can get.
Absolutely. I definitely do agree with that. And I mean, when Adrian Peterson got released, yeah, I was like, and I felt like this when, I discussed this last week when it happened. And I said, okay, Adrian Peterson got released. I'm like, okay, it was, we tried, we
Right.
gave it a shot. It just didn't work. And that's what a lot of fans and a lot of people have got to understand. Every free agent signing, every trade, every draft pick, sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes you're trying to do some things, you're trying to improve, but every free agent pick, every draft pick is not going to always work. This just did not work. And it wasn't of anybody's particular fault. Adrian Peterson came in with a great attitude. He definitely tried. The team embraced him. Got him his 125th career touchdown, so he could take that. So, I mean, not all was bad, but, again, like you said, give some younger running backs a shot, and in that way, when the king returns to his throne, he's got some younger guys behind him. That way, they could give him a breather, and they showed that, as we were talking about in this game.
And it totally depends on, sorry to interrupt you, Chris, but it totally depends on what your expectations were for Adrian Peterson coming in. Because I know there were a lot of texters and callers texting and calling into Stillman and Company and expecting Adrian Peterson to come in and, run up 100 yards a game, 2 touchdowns a game, 80-yard games, 75-yard games. I think that's a really high expectation. So, you could say like, oh, Adrian Peterson was a failure. I don't think he was, because I really don't think that was Mike Vrabel and Todd Downing's, their intention with Adrian Peterson. They wanted to try a guy out. They were, kind of desperate to kind of grab all of these guys in and to fill the holes that were left when Derrick Henry left. And I think they just wanted a little bit more of a veteran presence for Deontay Foreman coming in as more of an inexperienced back. So maybe he served his purpose there, and he was able to give Deontay Foreman a little bit of the confidence that he needed. But totally depends on your expectations. I didn't have crazy high expectations. So seeing as though the Titans cut him, it wasn't the craziest news to me.
Absolutely. I definitely do agree with that. And speaking of Deontay Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard, as before you were coming on, I was just starting to give my thoughts about the Patriots game. And as we see on the stats, Tannehill didn't have the greatest game. Obviously only threw for a touchdown and interception, 93 yards. Foreman and Hilliard both, definitely showed a lot that they could definitely do the work, in Derrick Henry's stead. And I mean, both over 100 yards. The last time that happened, I believe, was back in, I want to say 2008 with Lindell White and with CJ 2K. Dontrell Hilliard had the long touchdown, but you had both of those fumbles that really hurt. And I tell this, and I said this just earlier. The Dontrell Hilliard fumble hurt because you were past midfield. You were getting past midfield momentum. I believe it was 13-6, and they had a chance to either make it 13-9 or possibly tie the game. And, only give up a field goal. That was a good job by the defense. I thought the Deontay Foreman fumble was the more catastrophic play because
it's where you really saw the Titans start to lose momentum.
Exactly. It was, and the Hilliard fumble was a drive killer. The Foreman fumble was a game killer for me, in my honest opinion, because you come out second half, Patriots get the ball, you get the stop, it's 16-13, Foreman gets a big run. And some people were asking me about it. I said, well, first off, when I looked at that play right off, first of all, Foreman has the ball in the wrong arm. You need to tuck it on the outside arm because there's a better chance of it not getting ripped out. And, and I definitely want you to chime in. I don't know if that was more of it was Foreman didn't have the ball held on, or it was just a good play defensively when it comes to that. But I just thought if he had an outside shoulder, maybe less chance of it getting fumbled. Maybe it gets out of bounds and we keep possession because you had a chance to possibly take the lead in that situation.
Oh, he had a wide open field in front of him. And that's the most frustrating part of it is it could could have completely changed the way that the game was going if the Titans got a few more points on the board. But you're right. I mean, he was carrying the ball. I mean, like how I carry a purse, like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ball was just was ready to fall out. And you
Yeah.
say, was it just a good defensive play? I mean, I don't really know how great of a defensive player you would have had to have been to have knocked that ball out because it was incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
But from when you're in the NFL, and especially against the Patriots that has such an incredible defense, you have to know that if you leave the ball unprotected, if you leave the ball in a vulnerable position, that's popping out. And they're going to take advantage of every single mistake or every single blemish that you're going to make. That is just Bill Belichick and who the Patriots are. So
Absolutely.
and then I mean, they both had great games stat wise when you look at the number of yards they were able to put up. And I wondered, how could Bill Belichick possibly allow them to run for that many yards? Surely he had to have thought that, the Titans have a bad game against the Texans because they kind of
Mm-hmm.
abandoned that run first offense. Yeah, he had to have thought, of course, they would go back to their bread and butter and you would use those two young backs and start to run the ball a little bit more. And I thought, surely, okay, after the first quarter, especially the first half, Bill Belichick will start to kind of shift things a little bit and change the way that he's playing defense. I thought, how did that not click? But I was talking to David Beauclair today, who filled in for Jared Stillman on Stillman and Company,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of workshopped it a little bit about how did Belichick's defense, the defense that's played so well this season, how did they let these Titans backs run all over them? And it's not a Derrick Henry, because if Derrick Henry runs for 200 yards all over you, I don't blame you because he's just that good. But we
Exactly.
thought, I mean, I wondered when Deontay Foreman first came in, why weren't the Titans giving him the ball more? And we thought maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
because the Titans were afraid of him fumbling the ball, him turning the ball over, that he didn't have great ball security. And I thought maybe Bill Belichick saw that. Maybe Bill Belichick saw that Deontay Foreman didn't have great ball security. So he was fine with letting him run all over that Patriots defense, knowing that the ball could have been left in a vulnerable position, knowing that
Mm-hmm.
Deontay Foreman could be prone to fumbling the ball or turning the ball over. That's complete conspiracy theory, and that's complete, just looking into the X's and O's of things and knowing how Bill Belichick works. And I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I do think that it could be a possible scenario because it worked.
Yeah.
Because he did let he let the backs take the ball on almost every single snap, and every single ball, or excuse me, every single back that carried the ball fumbled. The Corey Blasingame fumble at the end of the game was kind of moot at that point,
Yeah.
but both of those backs, Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman, fumbled it. And I wonder if that was Bill Belichick's plan all along, was put the ball in their hands and we'll be able to get it from them.
Yeah. And I mean, this was one of my blue enforcer 4 points to victory. I said, handle with care,
Mm-hmm.
take care of the football, because I'm like, this defense is opportunistic. They will jump at a chance at turnovers. And I kept saying it during my live stream. I'm like, you cannot make mistakes like that against a team like this.
Mm-hmm.
You turn over the football, it's not a good thing. And
We
that's
even thought
exactly
against the Texans. They're not a very good team, but you make mistakes and you turn the ball over and you can lose to any team in the NFL. You can't make mistakes like that.
exactly. And I mean, against the Texans is like, honestly, if you turn the ball over 3 times against the Texans, the way the game was going, you still had
Mm-hmm.
a shot. You
Yeah.
turn the ball over 3 times against the Patriots, it's not looking good.
They're going to
And
capitalize on every mistake.
exactly. And that's exactly what they did. And also talking about that, the offensive line, I thought, played a pretty decent game for the most part. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think only one sack was really on the offensive line. The other one, I just think the first sack, I think Tannehill just ran himself into that one. He should have got out of there a little bit better, and he
Mm-hmm.
ran himself into that sack. Quesenberry played that play about as good as you could possibly do. You keep him outside, away from the quarterback. Tannehill should have been able to shift to his right, away from that, and then Quesenberry pushes him out of the play.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Tannehill stood in there, ran himself right into Lawrence Guy for that sack. So I think the offensive line, was a lot better than I think a lot of people would have anticipated against this front. That is a very good front. I'll give them
It
that.
is a very good front.
It is. And on the other side, I just thought there were some opportunities that we didn't take advantage of. Another game killer Dylan Cole dropping a pick six. I'm
Right in
thinking
his hands.
right there. And I believe that was on the drive after the Deontay Foreman fumble, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
And
If
so, if you have that happen, Foreman scores or we get a touchdown 20-19. Dylan Cole catches that football. There is no way on God's green earth anybody is catching him. And I obviously got to plug up my computer before it dies. So,
no, do your thing. But yeah, I mean
yes,
that was two missed opportunities back to back. And then Dylan Cole obviously doesn't return it for a pick six, and the Patriots turn that into a field goal. So it
exactly.
wasn't just opportunities, points missed for the Titans. And it wasn't just, okay, defense get back out there and make some stops and we'll get the ball back. It was another opportunity that the Titans handed the Patriots pretty much on a silver platter,
Yeah.
and they weren't able to capitalize on it. And I've said it so many times, but if you give the Patriots an opportunity, if you give any team in the NFL, but especially the Patriots, probably the most disciplined team in the NFL led by Bill
Yep.
Belichick, you give them opportunities, they're going to take them. And that's exactly what the Titans did repeatedly, was gave them opportunities.
Sure
Titans
did.
missed opportunities. Kevin Byard, for example, missing what could have been a pick. That was a
That's another
44-yard
one.
pass from Mac Jones. Kevin Byard missed it by just like a half second, a second. That's your job, Kevin
Yeah.
Byard. You got to make those stops.
I'm gonna take a quick 10-second breather on this. Let
Yeah.
me plug up this. That's exactly the play I want to talk about. So everybody, give me about 10 seconds. I'll be right back.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
All right, there we are. We're back on now, and sorry for that quick breather, but getting back to that, yes, that Kevin Byard play, that was another one. And all I kept thinking when I saw that play, and I told some other people that, Kevin Byard looked like he was about a half second early, in my honest opinion. I don't know if he was a half second early or a half second late.
I think you're right. It was early.
I think he was about a half second early because you see that play happening in real time. Okay, Byard's kind of with the corner, and then you see Byard coming over. All you're thinking is, okay, this is a classic KB interception. He's about to get it. I'm like, Byard's going to pick this one off. And it just went just a tad over his hand. And all I kept thinking is, 99 times out of 100, Kevin Byard's picking that one off.
Probably so.
I mean,
and for Mac Jones, a guy who's really not known for his deep balls. He wasn't at Alabama, and he hasn't so far with the Patriots. His bread and butter right now, what Bill Belichick is keeping him to, is 6-yard screens here and there, 5-yard pass here and there. Let's slowly make our way to a first down. He's not a 45-yard pass kind of quarterback.
exactly.
And he made several of those throws against the Titans. So I have to put that on the defense for allowing Mac Jones to make these plays that he's really not designed to make.
I definitely do agree with that one. Let's see, we got a quick comment. Walker God coming in says, we found an answer for the running game with Foreman and Hilliard. Now Tannehill has to get on point with new receivers coming in because timing is everything. I mean, in a sense that is true, but they got to, first of all, Foreman and Hilliard, stop fumbling the football. Number one. That is the first rule as a running back you're supposed to learn in Pee-wees, is to hold the ball high and tight. You put it in your outside arm when you're running. And you put two hands on the ball, you get it to your outside arm. Whether if you're running right, you put it in your right arm. If you're running left, you put it in your left arm. That way, high and tight, it's harder for the defender to take it out, because most of the time the defender is coming from the inside, not the outside, to try to tackle you. So if you hold it in your outside arm, less chance of a fumble. Inside arm, it could be vulnerable. Now, there are times, no matter if you hold it high and tight, if there's a Peanut Tillman punch, or if somebody, as a coach says, when you make a tackle, you put the head on the foot, you put your helmet on the football. Sometimes, if that happens, it's like, look, that was just, no matter how high and tight you got it, if the defender puts his head on the football and it comes out, that's just a defender making a great play.
Right. But you can't let the defender make a play like that, because it wasn't anything that was that outstanding or any sort of highlight play. The defender was just doing his job.
Exactly.
And Foreman wasn't.
And that's, and that's what I kept saying. And, Lee coming in and said Belichick-led team always disciplined, which we mentioned that, and that is absolutely correct. And I believe you and Jared said this. Final score didn't reflect how the game went, and I agree.
100% agree.
Because at the end, you can't let guys make plays like that, take advantage of that. It's not indicative. The score was not indicative of how the game went. I kept saying it, the Titans were right there the whole game. They were right there. They did not let it get away until the end, but the mistakes just started to add up, and that's just where it did us in. And so I honestly think if that game is played again, maybe with a couple more bodies, I think the game goes a lot differently, in my opinion. So I thought there were a lot of good things that did come out of this game, but there were still a lot left to be desired, especially, like I said, defensively. We should have gotten more pressure than what we did.
Yeah, I think that's the most frustrating thing, is that I kind of went into this Patriots game thinking, look, the Titans are so injured. It's a road trip and it's cold in New England. If this is a loss, that's okay. But that's the most frustrating thing, is that the Titans could have won this game. The first half, the Titans were very much so in this game, and they had a lot of momentum going. The run game was working. They weren't necessarily getting things going on the defensive line, but the run game was working, and the Patriots couldn't stop it. Yeah. So that's a frustrating thing. I agree with the commenter saying that it was not indicative of the final score whatsoever. The Patriots just kind of took the game and ran with it in the final quarter. I think they kind of knew that they had the game, and the Titans just kind of, let them continue to score. But the first half, this was very much so a toss-up. And it's frustrating to see the final score being such a disparity, because you may look at that final score and you may look at Tannehill's final stat line, 93 total yards on the day, and you may say, wow, the Titans played terribly. They didn't. The Titans played a really good game. Mike Vrabel had an excellent game plan and sticking to the run. Tannehill not putting it in the air very much, because after a 4-interception game against the Texans, you can't put the game in Tannehill's hands. You can't expect him to throw it for 350 yards every game. I think Vrabel had a great game plan, and it was a winnable game plan. Just too many mistakes forced them to lose that game.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, going into now looking after this game, thank God the bye week is finally here. It could not get here fast enough. And, we had a little bit of bad news come out of the game, of course. Monty Rice suffered an ankle injury early in that game. And I have been continuing to say this. I kind of owe Monty Rice an apology, because on my draft show, I think, like Jared, I blasted this pick to death. I hated this pick. As one of my fellow commenters, one of my fellow fan, Lee Hillis, who was on the show, was basically, he heard me go off. I was ticked off. But he's been playing well. He's been playing pretty well, pretty solid for the majority of the time, and then suffers that ankle injury, and we're already without Rashaan Evans and David Long Jr. Pray to God both of those guys come back at some point. But Monty Rice missing the next 3 games, that just adds to the injuries again.
And that's the exact last thing that the Titans need. And you saying the bye week couldn't come soon enough. I'm with you, because I've heard so many people saying, "Oh, it's coming at the perfect time." The perfect time would have been a couple weeks ago, when this team when they lost Derrick Henry, when they continued to, losing AJ Brown, losing Julio Jones. It came a couple weeks too late. I think we saw that in the past 2 games, just making so many sloppy mistakes that if they were a little bit more well rested, mistakes they probably wouldn't have made. So I'm with you on that. It could not have come soon enough. Losing Monty Rice absolutely is a hit, but I think the biggest thing is not having Rashaan Evans or David Long Jr. I mean,
Yeah,
David Long Jr. is a baller, and he
yeah,
has played so well this season. So I think, yes, losing Monty Rice, you're really just losing depth at that linebacker position. But the biggest loss here is just waiting for Rashaan Evans and David Long Jr. to get back, because Jayon Brown, like, what are you doing, dude? What are you
yeah.
doing? I mean, he hasn't had a standout game, in my opinion, so far this season. So I think really just, I mean, Dave Long Jr. outplayed my expectations 100%. So I'm just waiting for him to
Yes.
get back and get healthy.
And I mean, kudos to John Robinson, because it seems like the 5th and 6th round, he somehow always finds a gem. Like, even
Right.
though Avery Williamson, he did all right for 4 years or whatever, that was a gem. That was a pretty good pickup. Jayon, before these injuries, seemed like a pretty good pickup in the 6th round. Now you get David Long, who is just, like you said, he's pretty much entrenched starter. He's probably due to get paid and get an extension at some point, a nice extension, which means it looks like, I mean, they could definitely be going forward with Rice and Long, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, honestly, if it
Mhm.
goes in that direction. So I already thought it would be, and we'll talk about the injuries in just a second. I thought it was going to be, okay, it's either going to be Evans or Brown. One of them is gone and it's going to
Mhm.
be paired up with David Long. Now you're looking at it as like both of them might be gone at this point,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
that's just, I don't see any scenario in which, barring injuries, in which the Titans can continue to put their faith and investment in Jayon Brown. I mean, seeing what David Long Jr. has been able to do for this team, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Jayon Brown misses assignments, misses tackles. And can we talk about the continuous missed tackles in that
Yes.
Patriots game? It seemed like so many times the Patriots gained 2, 3, even 4 extra yards when they should
Mm-hmm.
have been down so much sooner. The tackling in the Patriots game was just atrocious. But I
Yeah.
mean, it just, I mean, it's a product of Jayon Brown and other defensive players for the Titans just missing assignments and
Yeah.
missing those tackles. But Monty Rice, surely not having that depth there will be missed. But in terms of play, it's David Long Jr. for me that I'm really missing and really hoping to get back sometime soon.
And that, I'm pretty sure his name is gonna come up later because I definitely have a few pick my brain questions for you as far as reviewing this season.
Yeah,
Quickly, also want to get thoughts. Kenny Vaccaro decides to retire.
yes.
Um, I mean, Kenny Vaccaro, I hate I don't have his stats pulled up. I meant to do that earlier. I didn't get a chance to. I liked what Kenny Vaccaro did as a member of the Titans. Gave us a couple of good years as far as being a safety. Definitely helped out Kevin Byard. Helped us out at a very tough time when Jonathan Cyprien went down right before the start of the season. He came in, filled in very nicely, and yeah, the play started to tinker off a bit. But I mean, I just thought he was a very, very solid player. As you know, Lee said, congrats on his retirement and good luck on his future endeavors. I I liked what Kenny Vaccaro brought along, and I thank him for what he did. You have any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Did he retire?
He has
He
retired from the
he
NFL.
retired?
I
Okay, because
don't.
I saw today that, he decided to go into his esports career, which I couldn't be happier for him. I mean, he said, like, this has always been a passion of mine. This has always been something that I've been wanting to pursue, and it's just always been a dream of his. So I
Mhm.
have to applaud him for going through with that, for being able to pursue this dream. And I know he said that there have been several teams that reached out to him when he was a free agent, the Falcons being one of them. Arthur Smith and Dean Pease wanting to bring him back into
Of
their
course.
system, see what he could do in Atlanta. He said there were several other teams that reached out to him, and he said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I love football, but I also love this." So nothing but the best for him. Wish him the best. I'm very happy for Kenny Vaccaro.
Absolutely. And I mean, class act, class individual. Definitely liked seeing number 24 in two-tone blue, so I definitely appreciate that. Let's see. Walker says, think we had a good game despite all the injuries still had. Still think we had a good chance. And we did. We definitely did. With that, Ms. Mims, how you doing? Hopefully you're enjoying your vacation and everything. But with this, um, I'm gonna skip stock up and stock down because we're gonna talk a lot about recapping these last 12 weeks and giving an idea. But I want to find out from everybody, and remember, as a lot of people will say, this involves all of you as well. This isn't just me and Caroline; it's all of y'all too. And first off, who would be your two-tone blue star of the week? So, who did you think played the best in this particular game with the New England Patriots?
It's kind of tough because I think with every star that I pointed out kind of came an asterisk of
And that's
they did
okay.
something really great, but they also made kind of game-changing mistakes. I think Dante Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard both had great games, and I think that they were both, challenged very much so in this game, being probably handed more touches. I don't know off the top of my head, probably more touches than they've ever had in an NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to capitalize off of that, and they were able to rack up a ton of yards against this really good New England Patriots defense. So I'd have to, give them a star. And then also, I know that Kevin Byard had missed assignments, but Kevin Byard led the team in tackles. He
Mm-hmm.
had a sack on Mac Jones, and a heck of a sack on Mac Jones. I think he had to take a
That was a
second
great
to
blitz.
recover from that one. A great, great tackle from him. So I would say it would be a combination of the three of them. I know Ryan Tannehill didn't have a huge stack game, but he was able to execute. That's something that Ryan Tannehill is able to do week in and week out. Is Mike Vrabel says, "Here's the game plan," and Tannehill can do it. Can he do it well? Maybe, maybe not. Is he going to do it mistakeless? Probably not. But he went 1 week throwing 300 and something yards, went the next week throwing about 90 and passing and handing the ball off to the running back. So I do have to give Ryan Tannehill, while it wasn't a career game for him, while he did throw an interception, he was able to execute the game plan that Mike Vrabel planned out for this Patriots team. So I know there's not one single star of this game. I don't really know if there's really one single player that's deserving of one single star, but those were four players that kind of stood out to me that did good things.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I'm kind of glad you're going on that tangent with me because that's kind of what I'm leaning at.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say and I see Money Mike is saying the O line, which I could
Had a
give
pretty
them a little
solid
bit.
game, yeah.
Very solid, very solid.
Whenever you don't notice the offensive line, it's a
good thing. Yes, it is. Sometimes no publicity is good publicity.
Exactly.
So, Ms. Mims said, I don't know who the two-tone blue star of the week would be, and I understand that. And
Nick Westbrook-Ikhine also had a pretty solid game.
Cody Hollister made a couple of nice catches.
Cody Hollister had a great game.
Had a couple of nice catches. I would have to say I'm gonna go two-tone blue star of the week for me has got to be Hilliard and Foreman together because I think they both broke out. Probably had their best games of their career so far. And I really do think that both of them shown they could carry this load until the king returns. So I really liked what both of those guys had to bring up. But just like we have a star of the week, we also have the dunce of the day. Somebody who did not play as well. And of course, I need to pull up just this amazingly loving sound that I think we all know and love. You gotta pull up The Price is Right losing horn. Because it just makes sense. So, on that note, who did you thought was the dunce of the day? And I think we might be thinking somewhat the same thing on this one.
I gave him a star. I may have to make him a candidate for dunce of the day, and that's Kevin Byard, because he made some great plays, he made some good tackles, and he had a sack on Mac Jones. But he missed that potential interception there. So I do have to give him an X. But my major dunce of the day has to be Randy Bullock.
Oh, didn't even think about that one.
Randy Bullock with a missed extra point, a missed field goal. In the past
Yeah.
2 games, he's missed 2 extra points. He
Mm-hmm.
missed a 44-yard field goal. And I understand that Randy Bullock isn't necessarily a long kick kind of guy, but 44 yards isn't incredibly long. We're not asking you to do 58, Randy. 44-yard field goal, you should be able to do that. And I'm not
Yep.
ready for the Titans to get back on the kicking carousel because they finally found a guy that's been fairly reliable. But I am concerned. And it was just, one of the many mistakes that culminated into this Titans loss. But Randy Bullock, your job is to kick extra points. Your job is
Yep.
to make those points, and every point matters. As we saw in that Saints game, the Saints lost 2 very important points from their kicker
Yep.
to missing extra points.
Would they miss
So
them
my
extra
gun for the
points?
day, got to go to Randy Bullock.
Fat Randy just got a little bit too fat. I did
Fat
not
Randy.
even I did not even think about that. And that is an excellent, excellent choice. I do agree with that. Lee comes in and says, dunce of the day, the secondary. And I will say, Janoris, I cannot call him Jackrabbit. I'm sorry. He has not
lost
earned
that
the
nickname.
name. He lost that nickname a long time ago to me.
He had a tough game. I mean, the stupid face mask penalty,
Yes.
the missed assignments, the secondary, I think was a very fair point.
And Fulton I didn't think was too bad. I didn't think Fulton was too bad, but yeah, that face mask hurt big time. And then, on the Kendrick Bourne back-breaking touchdown, you got to get him out of bounds. Get him out of bounds and bring him to the ground. And it just seemed like sometime late they were trying to fumble get him to punch the ball out instead of just securing the tackle. But I said these guys were my star of the week. I'm going dunce of the day has to go Hilliard and Foreman for the exact reason. Had great games running the ball, but 2 costly fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
And
2 fumbles that could have been 14 points.
Exactly. You had the 2 fumbles, the Dylan Cole pick 6. That's 21 points right there that we could have had. And this game completely goes the Titans' way in that instance with that. And let's see, Miss Mims comes in saying Jenkins, Tannehill, and Todd Downing, also Foreman as well.
She makes a good point with Todd Downing.
And that is a good segue right into the very next point. Ms. Mims, thank you for that. As we go, it makes us go quickly into Pick My Brain. And we are definitely going to have a lot of questions on this. Pick My Brain coming right up, y'all. All right, y'all. Had to play a little music right there. But yes, right into Pick My Brain because that was the perfect segue into that because I have a few questions as far as the Titans on this season. And Todd Downing is an excellent question. Todd Downing, yes, definitely deserves some dunce of the day consideration because, the question is, how do you feel about Todd Downing as the offensive play caller so far? I mean, it seemed like, and this is what I thought. Going into right before Henry went down, it looked like, okay, there was a lot of noise in the offseason about Todd Downing. Some people will say, yeah, he wasn't that good in Oakland. And, he tends to go away from what works sometimes. And it seemed like before Henry went down, it looked like Todd Downing was about to figure it out. It looked like he was finally figuring it out, getting into a flow. Then Henry goes down, and that pretty much messed up everything. And it seemed like, Dad, we got to start all over again. So what are your thoughts as far as Todd Downing as OC?
Yeah, Todd Downing as a whole to be honest, I'm not obsessed with him. I don't think he's the greatest gift that the Titans have ever been given. I don't think he's been doing a terrible job. And I think that after a lot of games where maybe the Titans offense didn't do as much as they should have, it's very easy to put the blame on two people, the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. And I think a lot of times it was put on Todd Downing when maybe some blame should have been put on Ryan Tannehill. I think there are some plays that Ryan Tannehill didn't read correctly, or maybe made a bad decision, or maybe got pressured. Because after that Jets game, it seemed like that rattled Ryan Tannehill so much because he wasn't making mistakes, or he wasn't making decisions as well as he normally does. I think after he got sacked so many times, maybe been a little bit of a mental aspect there that we kind of saw in the following weeks. Under any sort of pressure, Ryan Tannehill freaked out and threw the ball, made a bad decision, put it in the hands of a defender. So overall, I'm good with Todd Downing as offensive coordinator. Some of the decisions he made against the Patriots, bonehead. I stood up and I was looking at the TV like, what are you doing? Running the ball has gotten you everywhere this game. Running the ball has been your entire offense this game. So why do you choose to throw the ball at the goal line? Why is that your decision? Why don't you just sneak out and run the ball?
Exactly. And I'm thinking, I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, first and goal, you're inside the 5. It's 4 down territory. Just punch till you get in. Till you get in.
It's worked for you the entire game.
And what I'm shocked about, usually they run the Tannehill read option special down there. And all season, we've only seen that a couple of times all season. I'm like, that should be your bread and butter go-to play, especially on 4th down. On 4th down, that would have been my go-to, is that read option. If somebody happens to be there, then, hey, you either find a way, maybe somebody leaks out or something like that, or what I would have called a good call I would have tried to come up with, maybe like the play that Malarkey ran with Mariota back in New Orleans some years back. You're rolling Tannehill out. Let either Pruitt or Firkser leak out to the other side, and then he just throws it back over. You know, defense is thinking you're going this way, you go back that way. That should have been a touchdown. That would have been a nice call. I think, you know, again, that was a situation where Todd Downing went away from what worked. The Texan game, I think I agree. That one was more on Tannehill than it was on Todd Downing. And
it was a bad game plan. It was asking Tannehill to do something that he really just can't do. He is not the quarterback that can sit back and throw for 350 yards. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Don't expect him to be, because that's not who he is, and that's not who the Titans want him to be. So don't make him that. I think it was just a bad game plan on Brady's part.
Tannehill should not be throwing the ball 52 times. Should not be throwing it 52 times.
No.
At the very most, Tannehill should be throwing the ball about 35 times. That's a pretty...
Most.
That's the most. And 35 is probably too high of a number, but that is about the limit, is 35. That's it. Should not be going any further than that. Let's see. We got somebody saying, let's see, some people consider Die Hard a Christmas movie. So does that mean Rocky 4 is also a Christmas movie? Rocky beating Drago, pretty much a Christmas miracle. We're going to get into some football, but...
Your Christmas can be your Christmas. I've never seen Die Hard.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I'm a total movie buff. I absolutely love movies, but that is one that I've never watched. So it'll be my list this Christmas. It'll be my Christmas movie.
Well, you know what? I'm going to confess too. Die Hard 1, I haven't watched a bunch of. I started from Die Hard 2. Die Hard 2 on, I've seen. So, you know, those happening around Christmas, I can kind of get with that. Rocky 4, I've never really qualified as a Christmas movie, although Rocky 4 was by far my favorite Rocky movie of all time. Rocky 4 was probably the best Rocky movie there is, hands down. I know some people will say 3, but I like 4.
How do you feel about the Creed remakes? Because I love those movies. Those are good movies.
Coming to me with questions. I like that. I've really enjoyed the Creed remakes, both of them.
They're good.
They're very good. They're
I'm a big
very
Michael B.
good.
Jordan fan.
Yes, and I definitely think he was the right guy to play that role as far as going into Apollo Creed's side. We hear a lot about it from Rocky's side, but now you're focusing more on learning from Apollo Creed, and now Rocky is kind of the sidekick to Creed instead of in Rocky, Creed was the sidekick to Rocky, and I kind of like that
All coming
dynamic of
full
how that happened.
circle. Yeah.
It does. It does come full circle. And the second one I thought was tremendous. I might be watching that this week because I got it. So I might watch that this week.
Add that one to your list. Well, it's the bye week after all. You can watch it on Sunday.
Exactly. I can because I don't have no game.
Bye week for
I don't have no
everyone.
game to worry about.
Yeah.
So yes, I love the Creeds. Definitely. So I definitely love the Creeds on that one. So definitely with that. But Titan Tiger comes in, says, realistically speaking, how healthy can we get in 2 weeks? Are we getting anyone back? And I have a list. I'm trying to see if I can pull it. I know I have it. Yeah, I have a list here that I put together. I know there are some guys that can come back for the Jags game. Julio can come back off of IR because he's already missed 3 games and he has the bye week. Dane Cruikshank could come back for the Jags. Bud Dupree could come back for the Steelers, and I believe A.J. Brown could come back for the 49ers game. And then we have some other guys who are not injured reserve that could come back at some point as well. Ola, Nate Davis, Rashawn, David Long, Tier Tart. But in asking that, how healthy could this team get? I think they could definitely use the rest, and this could be huge for them going down the stretch as they prepare for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's kind of 2 different questions, is how healthy can we get in 2 weeks and who can we get back? Because I think there are probably a lot of players out there playing with some injuries, some nagging things that they've acquired throughout the season that they're not on IR and they don't have to miss games, but it's definitely messing with them a bit in games. And I don't know anyone off the top of my head because they're probably not going to tell you. But
Exactly.
I mean, having a week of rest mentally is probably so nice. Physically, to not be, berated on the football field for a week. I think that you may see a lot of guys start to any kind of muscle tweaks or any sort of soreness that they may have been experiencing the past few weeks. You can recover from that in 2 weeks, and having the bye is really the only way to do that.
Exactly.
What players can we get back? You said Julio is one that the Titans could get back, but I mean, I asked this question on Stillman and Company today. How much of an impact can Julio make when he comes back? Are the Titans going to rush him back? Because he could be back for the Jaguars game. He will essentially be free of IR after his 3 weeks for the Jags game, but are the Titans going to want to rush him? I mean, he's 33 years old in wide receiver years. That's ancient. So a hamstring injury lingers no matter how old you are. So are the Titans going to want to rush him back in a game where they may or may not need him? And if he does come back, how much of a contribution can he really make? Obviously, having Julio Jones out there doesn't hurt the team. It's why he was brought in the first place. But what have we seen so far from Julio Jones this season that makes us think like, yes, thank you, Julio is back? Having another pass catcher would be great. Maybe he gets double teamed, and that frees up Chester Rogers, that frees up Cody Hollister to not be covered up so much. Having him out there is absolutely invaluable. Just don't know how much of an impact Julio could make in terms of yardage or touchdowns, because Julio has yet to score a touchdown this season.
Oh, well, I'm going to say de facto one in Seattle because
that was a touchdown.
That was a
touchdown. The Titans got screwed.
Exactly. That was a TD all the way. I don't know how is it they don't see that. It's clear as day. Foot's inbounds, not out of bounds. That is a TD that he should have had.
That was a touchdown all day. And that was good football awareness on his part to get his foot down.
Yes. That was great awareness right there. I love the catch. I love the entire play that was happening there. So I definitely do agree. And I just thought that was pretty cool. real quickly, we're gonna get into some more Titan questions.
Yeah.
Lee says, quick, we'll go college football for a second. Brian Kelly to LSU. What were your thoughts about that? And of course, we hear he's going to LSU. Lincoln Riley's going to USC, which probably seems like some lateral moves. So, what were your thoughts about some of those college moves?
Yeah, well, LSU, my alma mater, die hard LSU fan till the day that I die. And I think it's a strange fit. But I feel like any coach coming in after the most likable guy in the world leaves in Ed Orgeron, a guy who is from Louisiana, is from the bayous of Louisiana, who has a Cajun accent, who knows and loves Louisiana. Any guy who comes in is going to feel like a little bit of a strange fit. So, that I'm not incredibly worried about, but I am worried about the fact that Brian Kelly, I mean, we've seen he's been able to win everywhere he's been. He's been able to win at Central Michigan. He's been able to win at Cincinnati. He's been able to win at Notre Dame, obviously. He's been at the college football playoff twice at Notre Dame, and he went to the BCS once with Notre Dame. But he didn't win any of those games, and he lost to one team in all of those games, and that was Alabama. And what is the one team that LSU fans have to beat every year if you want to be in the national conversation? If you want to go to the SEC championship, if you want to go to the college football playoff, that's Alabama.
Alabama.
So I know Brian Kelly is a winner and he's been able to win, but can he win those big games? Can he beat Alabama? Because, I mean, this is not a Notre Dame schedule now. This is not Army and Stanford and Purdue. This is Alabama, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Auburn, Florida. These are some of the toughest teams that you are going to face in college football. Georgia might be
sprinkled in there too.
Georgia too, if you ever have those cross seasons. So I remain cautiously optimistic about Brian Kelly. I think that he is a guy that comes in when LSU is faced with a ton of Title IX allegations. Is Brian Kelly the guy that's going to be able to handle that? Maybe a little bit better than Lane Kiffin, which was another name that was thrown around for the LSU head coaching job. So I'm excited to see what he does. I'm excited to see how he coaches up a lot of these really talented recruits that Ed Orgeron was able to bring in. So I've remained pretty neutral. I'm a little bit nervous about it because I think he's kind of an a-hole. But if you can win games, then hey, act how you want. But Lincoln Riley to USC, I personally don't think that he's going to find a ton of success because I think a lot of the success that he's been able to find at Oklahoma, he's been riding the coattails of Bob Stoops' talent. He's been riding the coattails of the recruits that Bob Stoops has been able to bring in. And what have we heard so much about Lincoln Riley? He's a quarterback whisperer. And there's probably a little bit to that, Baker Mayfield winning the Heisman and Kyler Murray winning the Heisman, but those aren't guys that he's developed. The one guy that he has developed, that he brought in, his recruit, his guy, he's coached up, is Spencer Rattler. He ended up on the bench this season. He wasn't able to win those big games for Oklahoma. So I think it'll be interesting to see Lincoln Riley at USC. I don't see him finding a ton of success, but I'm excited to see the change.
Now, I will say this. When I heard about Lincoln Riley going to USC, and I will put it out there, I am not the biggest follower of college football, although I've been on BetMGM and college football has cost me a lot of money.
Well, I'll put you on, Chris. I got you.
But the thing about Lincoln Riley going to USC told me one thing. He probably is a little scared of Alabama because Oklahoma is going to the SEC as well, along with Texas. And like you said with LSU, what's the constant that's going to be happening in the SEC? If you're going to the SEC, you're going to have to go through either Alabama or Georgia, at times LSU, Auburn. If you're really going to be a contender, you're going to have to go through those big four. And an occasion, Texas A&M. So Lincoln Riley probably like, and this is just me, he's like, no, I'm going to go to USC because I might be able to dominate in the Pac-12, although Oregon might have something to say about that, and Utah might get into that conversation too. But he probably thinks I have a better chance of dominating a conference in the Pac-12 than getting my butt kicked in the SEC from time to time. So
100%. And they're paying him a pretty paycheck in the process.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's making, $110 million over 10 years? Living in LA. I mean, it's a pretty cush job.
And shout out to Mel Tucker at Michigan State as well. Even though I am a Michigan fan, I like Go Blue. You
Okay, well,
know,
exciting season for y'all.
I am, and now everybody knows this. I am a Memphis Tiger alum, but I grew up liking Michigan football. I love the history. That is
Hmm.
number two besides Memphis. But Michigan's having a really good year. They're in the Big 12 championship. Finally beat Ohio State. Thank goodness, because I don't like Ohio State. But Mel Tucker getting a 10-year, $95 million contract extension for African American head coach. I give him all the props for that. I know Miss Mims love her some Michigan State. I know this, Miss Mims. I know. But
And I
um,
mean, Mel Tucker was a guy that I would have loved to have seen to go to LSU. I mean,
mhm,
everywhere he's gone, similar to Brian Kelly. I mean, he just continues to build programs up. I would have loved to have seen him to go to LSU, but I also have to give him props for saying, look, I'm developing something really great here at Michigan State. I'm recruiting these
mhm.
kids. I like the program. I'm going to stay where I'm at. And good for Michigan State for paying the man because he deserves it.
Absolutely. Now we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to go into some Titan questions about the first 12 weeks because I know we've been running a little long, but we're having a good conversation nevertheless.
Yeah.
Drumstar comes in, and this is something a lot of people have been asking me about, wondering what I think. And I think this is a very good small conversation to have. Do we blame strength and conditioning, maybe the program, as far as with all the injuries that we've had to deal with? And I know Vrabel has said you really can't blame strength and conditioning on that, but we're talking about injuries and everything. I know quite a few people have asked about this. What what are your thoughts as far as the injury issue and what you think that could be? What is the right word I'm trying to say? What could that be pointed to as far as to why these injuries just continue to happen?
So, I mean, it would be easy to say, like, these are just freak things if they
Mm-hmm.
were contact injuries, a collarbone from a weird tackle or,
Mm-hmm.
a broken arm or broken leg, whatever it may be. If it was from a tackle or from a weird, whatever it is, if it was just a weird, funky thing that happened,
Mm-hmm.
Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow last year,
Torn
just
ACL
getting
with Caleb.
tackled, torn ACL. Um, but that's not the case. A majority of these injuries are soft tissue. It's foot or hamstring or like labrum muscle in your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be easy to blame the strength and conditioning coach. And that's initially kind of what I thought when Mike Vrabel kind of dismissed the question. I thought, but really, are we really looking into this? Are these strength and conditioning programs really doing the best that they can do for the players? When it comes down to it, I don't know what the strength and conditioning coaches are doing. And
Right.
I'm not a trainer. I can't look at a player and say, oh, they have him on a hamstring rehab program, and they really need to be putting him on a back strengthening program.
Yeah.
I can't look at what the players are doing. I don't see them in practice. I don't see what their strength and conditioning looks like. So I can't say that it's them, but I do wonder if that's something that John Robinson has looked at and said, maybe we do need to evaluate this. I asked Chris Sanders the same question today. I said, when you were a player for the Titans, when you played, if you got hurt, was it ever a strength and conditioning issue? Did you ever look at the trainers and say and question what they were doing? And he said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. A lot of it is up to the players to do their own strength and conditioning programs. So I know that that's been a topic around a lot of Titans fans. Can we point to the strength and conditioning coaches? I just don't think I'm at liberty to say because I'm not in
Yeah.
there. I'm not a trainer. I don't know.
And you know what? That is a very fair point to make because I mean none of us, and I mean some people probably go as far as even the medical staff, and it's like really none of us are medical experts unless somebody who is watching is a doctor or a nurse
Hmm.
or really knows the typicals of these injuries. Like when Derrick Henry went down and you hear Adam Schefter saying, oh, he's out for the year. There's no way he's coming back. Then Ian Rappaport says 6 to 10 weeks. And when we were talking about that injury, the Pro Football Doc basically said, hey, this is about a 6 to 10 week, type of injury, after
Hmm.
about 6 weeks, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And good news is he's been around the facility. Derek has been getting treatment, which is a good thing. Obviously, looks like he's in good spirits, proceeding as normal. And if we all know Derrick Henry, the monster that he is, wouldn't shock me if he comes back sooner than 10 weeks. I could see him coming back in about 8, honestly, because of how he works out. I mean, the dude is going to find a way to get back on the field, probably sooner than expected. But again, we're not medical experts. So do not take our word for, as LeVar Burton would say on Reading Rainbow, don't take my word for it.
I talk for a living. I mean, that's all I have to offer. I can speculate for a living.
Hey, I can neither I can neither confirm nor deny said reason. So,
exactly. I just stir the pot.
Exactly. Stir it up good. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, you could look at that, but I mean, you really can't tell. And hopefully we get some guys back and things like that, and things are getting better for the long run. I like what Lee said. We have this bye week. Then after the 49ers game, you get 10 days before the Dolphins, so you get kind of a mini bye. So that does help as well. And
especially right around that time, that could be a Derrick Henry return period. You know, we're not going to really know exactly what his injury is looking like, but that could be maybe on the earlier side of Derrick Henry's return.
Yes, definitely. And so in continuing kind of to pick my brain as we get ready to head towards the end of the show, do have a few questions, Caroline, specifically for you. Who would be, in your honest opinion, your Titans MVP so far through 12 games? And the reason why I bring that up, we do have, first of all, the standings. Yes, the Titans have fallen to 3rd, but they're only a half game out of that first place, so they can still get that bye. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that, but everybody think about this. Even though the Steelers got destroyed by the Bengals, Baltimore still has to play the Steelers twice and have to play the Bengals again. New England, 2 out of the next 3 weeks. I want to say 2 out of the next 3 weeks or 2 out of the next 4 weeks. New England tangles with Buffalo. So you know those are going to be dog fights. And sprinkle in a game against the Patriots, against the Colts in between that, which is one the Titans better be paying attention to. And then you got Kansas City just sneaking up in there from behind. You know Kansas City could get hot at any point. And then Cincinnati, Buffalo, and the Chargers in the wild card position. So I know a lot of people are thinking, Dad, there goes the number 1 seed. Number 1 seed is still very much in play right now. And
they've got tough schedules coming up.
They do. I expect Baltimore to lose at least another 2 games. And I think Baltimore has another tough game in between that. I can't remember against who. I want to say the Rams is who they're going up against as well. So Ravens got a couple of tough games.
Mm-hmm.
In my predictions at this point, I had the Titans at 9-3 at this point. Of course, I had them beating Arizona, losing to Seattle. That went the other way. Obviously, the Jets definitely messed me up. We got Kansas City, Indianapolis. So, had some good predictions, but kind of went the other way.
I mean, yeah, solid predictions. And I was with you. I did not expect the Titans to beat Buffalo, but I thought that Kansas City and Indy were going to be almost for sure losses. Going into the season, I said, 100% going to win that first game against Indianapolis at home, 100% going to lose that game on the road at Indianapolis. It just always feels like that's how it goes with Tennessee and Indy. But It's looking pretty good. And your final 5 games, your projections are pretty on par with me. I thought either that Pittsburgh game or that San Francisco game will be a loss. One of those two, I think, the San Francisco game coming off of short rest, on a road trip at Pittsburgh, it's going to be cold. Those two I think are really toss-up games. But other than that, I really predict the Titans going 4-1 for the rest of the season. Maybe that final Houston game, if the Titans are at a comfortable position, which if they're vying for that top spot, I don't necessarily think they will. They could drop that final game against the Texans if they decide to take their foot off the gas and kind of take a breather and enjoy the position that they're in. But I expect the Titans to go 4-1, no worse than 3-2.
I agree. I like 4-1 as well, and I don't know if I would necessarily rule out 5-0, but I think that might be asking for too much.
Not ruling it
Honestly,
out at all.
you
I mean,
know,
I think before the Texans game, I would have said that final 5 games they're going to go 5-0. But just seeing the way that the injuries are going, I don't want to.
mhm,
I don't want to put that expectation on the Titans. I think 4-1 is totally fair.
absolutely. And so with that being said, who so far is your Titans MVP so far in this year? I mean, unfortunately, we can't say Derrick Henry. That would have been the easy answer because, he's been down and he's still second in the league in rushing and he's been out for 4 weeks, which is quite remarkable, which I think you'd have been at around 1,300 yards right now. But who would
Uh-huh.
you say is your MVP so far?
I mean, I think it totally depends on how you define MVP. For me, it's okay. If you take this player off this team,
Mm-hmm.
how hurt is the team? Is the team going to be able to bounce back? That's why I would say maybe Julio isn't an MVP because if you take Julio away from the equation, the Titans don't really miss any steps. Of course, they probably miss him being there and miss him as a target, but the Titans are going to be okay. That's why it's so easy to say Derrick Henry because you take Derrick Henry away, this is a completely different team. This team
I
has
agree.
so many more challenges without Derrick Henry. They're not going to stack the box. So that makes A.J. Brown and Julio Jones or whoever the pass catchers are going to be, that makes their job significantly more difficult because all of the focus is off of Derrick Henry. That's the easy answer, and I think that's really who the MVP would be. Even with him out for 6, 8, 10 weeks, he's still a Titans MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I might pull out a dark horse here and say Jeffrey Simmons.
Mm.
He's been a bad man so far this season,
Yeah.
and I think that you've really seen him kind of come out of his shell. I think adding Danico Autry makes
Yes.
Jeffrey Simmons
Yes.
just flourish. And I I asked Sharon Davenport this question
Love to
about,
hear.
when is Jeffrey Simmons? He's awesome. I said, when is Jeffrey Simmons going to be this guy that the Titans fans were promised that he was going to be? He said that he's a Robin who just needed his Batman. And that's exactly what it was. He just needed Nico
Mm-hmm.
Autry to come in. And it's tough to say that this guy who was dependent on the performance of someone else to come in could be the MVP. But I think that the growth that we've seen from Jeffrey Simmons and the production that we've seen from Jeffrey Simmons,
Yes.
especially that Rams game. I mean,
Oh
he was
yes.
all over Matthew Stafford that entire game. And I
Loved it.
think the defensive line was really the force behind that Titans win. So I would say the defensive line as a whole, if we're not going
Mm-hmm.
to say Derrick Henry is the MVP, the defensive line as a whole. But I really have liked what I've seen from Jeffrey Simmons and just his development from, getting drafted by the Titans to now.
Yeah, and Miss Mims obviously agrees with you on Big Jeff,
Go
and
girl.
yeah, and I think some people are loving you on this show. By the way, Zach Carpenter goes with Kevin Byard, and that is another good pick because
Yeah.
I mean, even though Byard did struggle in this last game, he did have 12 tackles, had a decent game. Kevin Byard has went. I've said this many times before. The mayor of Murfreesboro is definitely back, and he's back with a vengeance. But the guy for me that I think is the MVP so far in this season, and I said this, a few weeks ago. Harold paid that man Landry. I'm sorry, J
So
Rob.
fair.
I'm sorry, J Rob. Pay that man. Give him his money because that is all Harold Landry has done, has made himself some money. Finally, we have a pass rusher over 10 sacks. First one since Brian Orakpo. He's finally gotten there, over 10 sacks, and just has improved every year going forward. And, like you said, Batman to Robin with,
Mm-hmm.
Danico Autry, who I think is probably the biggest and most underrated signing or pickup this
Totally
entire
agree.
offseason with
Totally
Danico
agree.
Autry. And to an extent, Bud Dupree was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can't wait to see them back together and have the four elementals back together. The four
The lads.
horsemen. The four horsemen back together as a whole. But Harold Landry, not only has he shined, he is deserving of a new contract. And I think the Titans, they got to make sure to re-sign him big time. I would try to sign him before the end of the year, but I know that's not J-Rob's way. But if it's me, I'm locking him up as soon as possible to not even have a chance for somebody else to even try to swoop in and just glamour him. I would do that, but that's my MVP so far. Harold Landry, pay that man.
And
Without a
how
doubt.
refreshing is it that all of the players that we just named, Kevin Byard, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, they're all defensive players. So last year, if I would have told you that some of the best players in the Titans team, some of those valuable players were defensive players, you probably would have laughed me out the room.
Probably somebody would have thought I was crazy too. I'd be like, what are you high? So what you drinking on?
This Titans defense? Are you
Really?
kidding me? Yeah.
And honestly,
very refreshing.
And even though the stats may not show it, they're saying 16 total defense, even though they're scoring defense. And we all said, if they're between about 12 and about maybe 18 defensively, if this offense gets back to being what they were, the Titans have a legit chance to do it all. As long as that defense is about right there. If they get higher than 12, that's perfectly, we're fine with that too.
That's fine.
That's fine. You can compete.
We said the Titans defense just needs to be average. It needs to be average and let the offense do its thing. But I would say that the defense has absolutely 110% exceeded my expectations.
Agreed. And also with MVP, now, who would be your biggest surprise that you that maybe you didn't see coming? And this probably is not an easy question to answer, but I don't understand. But who would be like your biggest surprise?
I would say, Kevin Byard is a player that I didn't necessarily expect a ton from him. And I know that he was always kind of touted as one of the better safeties in the league. But the production that he's made this season compared to, let's say, last season, it feels night and day. And I do think that has a lot to do with the defensive line, because whenever you're putting pressure up front, that makes your secondary's job so much easier. So I think that, I didn't expect the defensive line to be this good, to be this stout, especially with 2 of the 4 players being part of the unit last year. I didn't think they could make that many strides. So, I say the MVPs. I would say the defensive line and Kevin Byard are 2 of my biggest surprises, just because my expectations for this Titans defense weren't very high. So since they were able to steal a game from the Rams, which I thought was one of the better teams in the NFC going into that Titans game, they were able to steal that game for the Titans. So I would say 100% either Kevin Byard or that defensive line.
Yeah, and I see a couple people talking Christian Fulton, which I
totally
definitely...
Christian Fulton is 100% in that conversation.
Absolutely.
But I do have to say, he wasn't my biggest surprise, because I covered him in his time at LSU. I covered the LSU football team for 4 years. That's when he was at LSU. So I knew what he was capable of because I saw it at the college level. And of course, the college level doesn't always translate well into the pros. But I knew that Christian Fulton was a ball hawk. I knew that he could play inside or out, and I knew that he could beat out any wide receiver thrown his way. It just didn't come to fruition in his first year in the league. He was injured, he didn't get a ton of opportunities. So 100%, he has been a surprise for what he's been able to do for the Titans this year. But in terms of his ability, I always knew that it was there, just because I covered him when he was in college. But I always knew it was there, but happy to see it come to fruition for the Titans.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us, when Caleb Farley got drafted, I knew they were going to bring him along slowly, but I think they thought at the end of the year, that's what it was going to be. Fulton on one side, Farley on the other side. They lock it down. And I'm hoping that with Caleb Farley, he'll be back ready to go next year, because I was so hurt when he got hurt against Buffalo. I was there. I was looking forward to seeing what he could do in his first start. And I thought he was doing okay so far in the game before he got hurt. And I was like, man, I was waiting for him to see what he could do. But I'm hoping that he'll be all right next year going forward. And I think he'll have time to recover. He'll be okay. My biggest surprise, and we mentioned this earlier, and I know it's probably not a surprise to you, and it's not so much what he's done, it's how he's done it. And that's David Long. David Long, not only coming in and being productive, he's basically just stolen somebody's spot. Whether it be Evans or Jayon Brown, he took and earned somebody's spot. took some food off of somebody's table a little bit, if I may say.
As he
So
should. That's his
yeah,
right.
I mean, he, as I use a wrestling term, he drop kicked somebody, basically out the ring, as far as that is concerned. And I mean, has stepped up in a major way. And even Monty Rice being as solid as he is, and that could be the duo of the future with Rice and Long. And I would say if that is the duo going forward, dare I say, I might be okay with that. I would be okay with that.
With Monty Rice, I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm not 100% there, but if it was a Rashawn Evans and a David Long Jr., sign me up. I'm in for it. Monty Rice, I think I need to see a little bit more from him, but I see the foundation there, and if it continues to grow, I think I could get there.
Absolutely, and I definitely do agree. Again, of course, we have the lovely Ms Caroline Fenton for 102.5 The Game from Stillman and Company joining us. And even though we have a surprise, and I know this is probably a more easier question to answer, who was your biggest disappointment in this season so far? I could probably name about 2 or 3 off the top of my head.
There's two that come to mind, and you mentioned one of them. He's not my biggest disappointment, but he's a candidate, and that's Caleb Farley. I can't put too much pressure on the kid, especially because we knew he was injured coming into this season. I wish that when he did have that opportunity to come into the game that he could have contributed more, because we were told, like, hey, if he was 100% healthy, he would easily be the first corner off the board. I wanted to
Right.
see that. I wanted to see best corner in college football from him. And I hate that he got hurt. So that's disappointing, but I wouldn't say that he's a disappointment. Who
Right.
is a disappointment is Julio Jones. You're getting paid
Yeah.
big money. You got a big contract, and you aren't earning your paycheck. And I didn't expect Julio Jones to come in here and do what he did in 2014 with the Falcons. I didn't expect him to be the top wide receiver in the league, but you're getting paid. And I need more from you, Julio. I mean, we've seen one solid game from Julio Jones, and that was Seattle Seahawks. Since then, it's been, a couple of receptions here, a few yards here and there, and he's made some big time first downs. But you're not getting paid for first downs. You're getting paid to be on the field, game in and game out, and you're
Yeah.
getting paid to make big time plays. And I know he's injured, and that's partly on John Robinson for signing him to such a big contract, knowing he's injured. But it's incredibly disappointing to see the draft capital, the money that the Titans have put into him, extending Ryan Tannehill to make up for his
To
salary,
invest. They
to
invested in him
invest
for the next
in
couple of
Julio
years.
Jones. Right.
And
And
so,
he hasn't been able to deliver.
yeah, I definitely agree. And this one, for me, there's a couple of ways I could definitely go as well. First off, Janoris. Janoris Jenkins is definitely a disappointment. I thought he would at least come in and be a solid contributor. But early on he was slipping and sliding all over the place, and then it's like get beat, get penalties, dumb penalties at the worst time, sometimes missing tackles and assignments. So Janoris is definitely a disappointment to me. Another, and somebody, somebody even mentioned this, Nate Davis.
Yeah.
Nate Davis has been a huge disappointment this season, because we all were thinking, he was taking those steps forward last season. We're all thinking, you know what? Nate Davis has a chance to be a Pro Bowl caliber guard, and it just has not been there. I mean, and I'll give most of the offensive line, as much as they struggle, some credit. Taylor Wan, even though he got embarrassed in game 1, I think he is slowly working himself back to form. Roger Saffold, the last few games.
Count
I'm
on
sorry.
because of injury.
Yeah,
Is Taylor
I
Wan-
agree. I agree. And I mean, I think with the injury, the concussion, he's still in concussion protocol right now, Nate Davis. And even Quesenberry, who has been the only offensive lineman, I want to say, that started, well, him and Ben Jones, that started every game. And Quesenberry hasn't been awful. He hasn't been awful.
I haven't been disappointed by David Questenberry. There have definitely been some snaps, some downs where I've questioned his coverage, but overall, like I have no issues with David Questenberry.
Yeah. So I definitely agree. I think Janoris and Nate Davis definitely a couple of big disappointments in my honest opinion as far as that.
I'm with you on that.
Now we got two more questions, and then we're gonna probably get you out of here because I know you probably getting ready to enjoy the rest of your evening. Best or favorite game so far?
I think probably the Titans' best game was the Chiefs. They were able to shut down one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks in the league going into that week. The Titans, what they were able to do on offense and what they were able to stop on defense, I think that was probably their most complete game so far. My favorite game was the Bills game because I was there Monday Night Football.
Yes.
It just felt like everything, all of the pomp and circumstance was just going to the Titans' way. I mean, Broadway that day looked like Little Buffalo. It seemed like everywhere I looked was red, white, and blue on Monday Night Football on the national stage. And this really kind of started to, begin the discussion of, wait, are the Titans good? And this is when all
Right.
the eyes kind of turned to the Titans. And it was a close game. And Derrick Henry went off. And every single second of that game was so incredibly exciting. It was such a back and forth game. Came down to the wire. Came down to quite literally a foot. So I think that was my favorite game so far. Also really enjoyed the Rams game, seeing what that defensive line could do. But I just had an absolute blast at the Bills game.
Yeah, and I will agree. I'm going to go a little bit topsy-turvy on that one. Best game for me, I would probably say, is the Bills game. I think the Bills game, to me, I thought was the best game because, again, like you, I was there. I mean, just the spectacle of Monday night, probably one of the best games I've been to as being a season ticket holder. The atmosphere was just awesome.
It was
Fantastic. I mean, stoked. Perfect Monday night game. Perfect weather. Could not have went any better. And it was just a back and forth game. It was, I came into that game with absolutely zero expectations. I said it before on the week before the show, on the week before the game on the show. I was like, look, everybody, look, don't have any expectations on this. Whether you're going to the game or you're watching it, just sit back and enjoy this football game. It's Monday night. Just enjoy yourself. We're on Monday night. And not only was it a great game, we win and made the big stop at the end. Derrick Henry with the big run. And it was, Julio with the great catch. The great awareness with the catch, which is probably one of his best plays ever. And, still got his feet down. Was incredible. That whole game was just absolutely fantastic. Favorite game, for the same reasons, the Rams game. No expectations. Me being a defensive guy, played defense in high school. I love just a good hard-nosed defense that just loves to punch people in the mouth.
Defense wins championships.
Exactly. And that was what they did. They went out there and they punched the Rams in the mouth out the gate with bombs. The Rams came in with a couple of little tiny jabs and maybe threw, an uppercut, but the Titans were coming with right crosses all game. And that was just incredible. And I enjoyed that game. The Chiefs game, I was like, okay, Titans up 7-0. Okay. They're up 14-0. Okay. They're up 17-0. I'm like, okay. Come on. When is Patrick Mahomes going to turn it on and score 17 straight? When is it going to happen? And it never did. That was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that.
I think, too, the Titans playing two of the most mobile quarterbacks in the league back-to-back with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and being able to shut down their run. And they didn't really scramble, I think was really cool, too, to watch.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people agree with the Bills game and also the Rams game. Those absolutely was incredible. I mean, just amazingly good time. Won't say which one is the worst. I think we all can answer those with two different games,
I have a
Jets and
couple
Texans.
in my head. Yeah, I have a couple in my head that weren't very fun to watch. I mean, even the Saints game. I know the Titans pulled out a win, but that was just a gross, ugly game to watch.
And that was, I want to say that was the second game without Derrick Henry. Yeah, it was expected to be ugly.
Yes.
It was expected to be kind of an ugly
A
game.
rainy day. It was just gross on both sides.
And then the Texas game, I know a lot of people was like, you still should have won. I'm like, I'm not going in the rain. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And I'm like, the way it was going, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't go because I knew it was going to be ugly.
I'm with you. I almost went. And then I saw the forecast. I thought, I will stay in the comfort of my own home.
Exactly. I was like, it's sloppy. It's ugly. It's miserable. And it felt like that the whole game. It felt miserable. I'm like, I would have been sitting out in that.
Yeah, watching the Titans get punched in the mouth by one of the worst teams in the NFL.
Sure did.
It wasn't beat down by any sort, but just to see how in the game the Texans were and eventually getting the win, frustrating.
And I honestly thought in that game, I'm like, people kept saying, was this a trap game? And I'm like, no, because it's a division game. Vrabel knows this team, Texans. Right. I'm like, we should be more prepared. I think
quarterback.
Yeah, and you're thinking, well, blame Mother Nature. You can't necessarily blame Mother Nature completely. Right. You can put a little blame on Mother Nature because obviously she was against us too. But you can't completely put it on Mother Nature for that. It was just a terrible performance. It didn't look like we were ready to play at all or wanted to be in that game.
No, I'm with you.
Finally, for the last 5 games, your outlook. I know we kind of gave predictions, 4-1 at worst, 3-2, and I'm with you on that same wavelength. I think 13-4 or 12-5, that definitely wins the division. We know the magic number is 3, so that means if shockingly the Texans beat the Colts, number goes down to 2, or if the Titans win. The Titans take care of business against the Jags. Colts lose to the Patriots. I believe that goes down to 1 because I think it's any combination. So if the Colts lose, it goes down to 2. We win, it goes down to 1 in that same week. So the Titans have a chance to wrap up the division pretty early and pretty much secure the first playoff spot. Really, probably the earliest I've ever known them to do it. So that is possible. And then they can say, you know what? Let's give it our best shot to get the number 1 seed. We got the division. Let's try for that number 1 seed. Now, if it looks like, it's not going to happen, then yeah, I can see that last game resting some guys. But if they can go ahead and wrap up the division, then, hey, take a shot at that number 1 seed. Keep fighting for that one as long as you can. Because it's still there.
That's the most important thing right now. Lock up the division. And
exactly.
It feels locked up. It's not there. It feels like they're in a very, very comfortable position, but it's not quite locked up. Stay healthy. Keep the players healthy that are healthy now. Get your injured players back in. Secure the division. Keep going for that top spot. Seems like it's going to be a little bit difficult, but if you look at the Patriots and the Ravens' remaining schedule, Patriots got to play the Bills twice. So they have a difficult remaining schedule. The Titans have been given a gift of a fairly easy remaining schedule. So, yeah, exactly. Win the division. Win the games that you're supposed to win. Stay healthy. Get to the playoffs.
Absolutely. As the late, great GM would say, just get me to the playoffs, baby. I got to do it. Rest in peace to the great Floyd Reese. Absolutely.
Floyd.
And so I agree with you on that. Finish off the division. Then you worry about the number 1 seed, and we go from there. Get healthy. Let the king come on back, and we make our run. And I think we get all of our horses back. We can make some noise. And, true enough, you don't want that tough road of, playing playing the Bills, the Patriots, the Ravens straight up like that. But sometimes, the toughest road is probably your best bet because you can say, you know what, we didn't have any flukes in there. We had to earn our way, and so I can see that being a possibility. But hoping we get a little bit easier of a road there. But
Hey, there's no
before,
shame in an easy road because you got to get there somehow.
hey, exactly. The toughest road is usually the road that most people won't take. And hey, winning ain't easy.
Right.
Winning ain't easy.
This league especially, winning is not easy.
Absolutely not. But Ms. Caroline, you have been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for being on. And I want to get you out of here on some good music because it is ladies' night. Gotta do it for the ladies, y'all.
Lynn's right. Well, thank you, Chris. Seriously, anytime. I'm always happy to hop on with you and always happy to hear your voice on our show.
Absolutely, definitely. So for those of you for those who may not know, or who may be joining late, and they should know the answer to this question, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Caroline Fenton1, Instagram at Caroline Fenton, and I'm live every Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 on ESPN 1025 The Game. You can follow us at 1025 The Game on Twitter.
Definitely. And see, y'all, that's pretty easy because obviously I think more people tuned in to listen to you and look at you instead of looking at me. So
you are a dime and a half to look at, Chris. So don't give me all the credit.
Oh, I feel so special. But yes, Caroline, it is definitely a pleasure. Always enjoy being on with you and with Jared, giving him a hard time. And that is one good question. And we're family. And I know Jared is probably going to go back and watch this at some point.
It's all love.
Does he give you a hard time? Is it just hard working with him?
Well, he gives me a hard time, yes. But I do have to say, I mean, I feel so incredibly lucky every day. And I'm not just saying that to say that. Jared has been the greatest mentor, friend, teacher, all of the above co-host that I could ask for. So really, truly do love working with him. Gets on my nerves all the time. Yeah. But it's like, I love to hate him and I love him.
Yeah, I do too. Jared is, and I tell this to anybody, Stillman and Company, that's one of my favorite shows. If anything, I make sure I try to listen to that show as much as possible because I'm like, Jared is going to do something to drive you crazy.
Always.
And I will say this, I say this all the time, and I think Floyd even mentioned it. Jared is not a warrior, W-A-R-R. He's a worrier, W-O-R-R-I-E-R.
Constant anxiety.
I mean, because it's like, I'm worried. I don't have a good feeling. I'm like, Jared, you say that all the time. Come on, man.
I do my best to try and talk him off a ledge, but no,
exactly. It's like sometimes I have to do that. Sometimes, we come on, I come on. I'm like, I gotta talk him off the ledge because I can tell
you for doing that.
I'm like, because it's like he's ready to jump quickly.
And sometimes I gotta grab his hand and say, no. Like the cliff is not that bad. It's really not that scary down there. I promise you.
Exactly. It's like you can look at me like, ooh, it's a long way down, but I'm not going to do this. And so I like that. Zach says this could be a good movie for us. Start out flat, gain momentum, the king fall, we struggle but fight, and when we're in the playoffs, we'll be watching the return of the king.
Hopefully.
And I love
crossed for a healthy Derrick Henry as soon as we possibly can get him.
Absolutely. And I love Lord of the Rings. Hey.
That's another movie, and I said I was a movie buff, and now I feel like I need to take that back because it's another movie I have never seen.
It's okay because there are certain movies that are just hot that I haven't looked at. Right. I mean, I hate scary movies. I'm not really the scary movie type. Horror movies are just not for me. Like, I mean, if it's a suspense thriller or something like that, okay, I could kind of get behind that.
Yeah, but just suspense kind of movie, psycho thriller.
Yeah, I agree. If it's like one of those like murder mysteries, I'm down. But if it's straight up like Jason or Michael Myers, I'm like, if I'm gonna watch that with some peeps, let it be in the daytime. I ain't watching at night.
Right. And don't make fun of me if I pee my pants, because I might.
Exactly. Because I mean, I made that mistake. And we're gonna get out of here on this. I watched Final Destination. I watched Final Destination where it was the roller coaster accident. And I remember watching that at like 12 at night. And I go to sleep right after. I'm like, and I woke up one morning, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking doing that? Like,
wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat.
Yeah, it was like, I'm like, oh my God, do I not like roller coasters anymore? And I'm like, I got over that. I'm like, I'm fine. I knew it was a movie, but it's like, okay, no more watching horror movies late at night. Save them for the daytime when I can kind of get that out of my head before I go to sleep.
Unfortunately, that's a lesson that you have to learn from experience, not watching horror movies late at night. Because once you learn that lesson, you'll never have to learn it again.
Absolutely, indeed. So, Ms. Caroline, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who's helped me hit over 1,000 subscribers. I'm almost at 1,100. So I'm trying to get to 1,100. I'm trying to march to 2,000. So we're on our way there. But Caroline, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Love hearing your voice and happy to come on whenever you'll have me.
Yes. And to everybody else out there, thank y'all so much. If you want some Titans of True swag, you know where to go. You can get in touch with me, or you can get with Miss Latoya on her email, on Instagram, or on her Facebook, as well, for any shirts, just like the one I had on. Also, the hat, just like the one I have on. Hit up Out the Crib Customs on Instagram. Or, again, if you want this, you can hit me up as well. I can get with them, and we can make this thing happen. So, for Ms. Caroline Fenton and for myself, thank y'all for tuning in to Titans and Truth. And once again, we are going to tighten up, because that's all we know how to do. Good night, y'all.